Ashley, what's the next topic?
Next one is a good continuation. It's from Michael Buchanan. Hi, John. I was reading that Endgame probably had well over 20,000 more screenings than Infinity War did. And there are some people saying that any record it makes now doesn't really count since it's unfair due to having so many more screenings than other films. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, so here's the thing. We were talking going into Avengers Endgame that here's the challenges. Here are the obstacles it's going to have to overcome. Number one, the runtime of 3 hours. Variety report, that means so many less screenings, but with extra screens being added, could it compensate for that? And there was all this math and breakdown and all this kind of stuff we did. Now, clearly, the stuff that offset the extra long runtime more than made up for that by miles. But it was a lot. It was a lot of extra screen. First of all, I can't remember how many more theaters were showing it than were showing Infinity War. But the key thing was, as we got into the final 3 and 4 days, more and more theaters started running 24 hours. Now, we saw 24-hour theater runnings of movies with The Force Awakens. We saw 24-hour movie theater runnings with Infinity War. But we started getting more and more as the days were counting down to Endgame launching. More and more theaters were switching over to 24-hour continuous running of the things, to the point that some people were reporting anywhere between 10,000 to 20,000 extra screenings. Not extra theaters, extra screenings, which is ridiculous and phenomenal. Now, some people are trying to suggest, and I get where they're coming from, some people are trying to suggest that any record now that Avengers Endgame sets for its opening weekend should have an asterisk beside it. It should not really count because they had so many extra screenings than the other movies had. Therefore, that's not fair. Therefore, that shouldn't count. And I'll say this. In principle, I could see where you're coming from on that, but it's nonsense. And here's why it's nonsense. This is why the record absolutely counts. This is why you do not need to put an asterisk beside it, is because of this. The demand for the movie necessitated the adding of the extra screenings. Because so many people were flocking and wanted to go see this movie, that's why the extra screenings were added. Like, to say that you have to put an asterisk beside it, that's to suggest that, well, if Infinity War had those X number of extra screenings, it would have had the exact same many people go. And that's a misnomer. You can't claim that. That's a theory. That's only a theory at best. The fact of the matter is, it was the audience demand that made the theaters go to extra screenings. It's the same thing like this, Ashley. Some people will often ask me about Avatar, right? Mm-hmm. They'll say, well, Avatar's all-time record shouldn't really count because it was in theaters way longer than most movies. To which I will then say, it was in theaters because people kept going.
Yeah, it's supply and demand.
Exactly. It's supply and demand. People kept going to these movies, and that's why it stayed in theaters. So, yeah, you don't put an asterisk beside Avatar. You don't put an asterisk beside Titanic or any stuff. It was a response to the demand. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, I believe, applies to this weekend with Avengers Endgame. Did it have more screenings than any other film in history? Yes, but there's a reason for that. It's not like it just came and filled a void. People were wanting these tickets, and the tickets that were available were getting sold out like that. We all remember what happened on April 2nd when the tickets went on sale and websites were crashing and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, this is a record, and yeah, it counts. Did it have more screenings than any other film in history? Yeah, but there was a reason for that, and that completely legitimizes, in my opinion at any rate, whatever record it sets at this point. So, anyway, that's how I can see it. I can see why the question is raised. I get it. But I think if you really sit down and think about it, it becomes pretty clear on what it is.